Speaker.
I call the member for Maitland.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. I rise to speak on the Water New South Wales Amendment Warragamba Dam Bill of 2018. Broadly speaking, this bill will amend the Water New South Wales Act of 2014 to allow the temporary inundation of national park land resulting from the proposed raising of the wall Warragamba Dam. Under the current National Parks and Wildlife Act, the government is prohibited from raising the dam wall. This proposal will cost up to $1 billion for a dam which is currently at 2/3 of capacity. And yet again, we see the government putting its cart before its horses, its horse before its cart with no EIS yet. This is an extraordinary request by a government when you put the suggestion into the context of the location that is involved in the area. This bill is asking for 2 exemptions: that a lease, licence, easement or right-of-way under the National Parks and Wildlife Act of 1974 is not required for or in respect of the temporary inundation of national parkland resulting from the Warragamba Dam project, and B, that the temporary inundation of national parkland resulting from the Warragamba Dam project is not subject to any plan of management under the National Parks and Wildlife Act. The mere suggestion of these measures has sparked a reaction even to my own electorate of Maitland, with a number of my constituents already contacting my office to ask me to oppose this bill and the eventual raising of the Warragamba Dam wall. As people who live every day on a floodplain, who've suffered from being stuck on flooded islands for over a week in the April 2015 superstorms in the Hunter and again in 2016, in January that year, they are appalled that this government would put future communities at risk by even countenancing the potential of a catastrophic flood risk with minimal capacity for evacuations. The Shadow Minister, Chris Minns, the member for Congra, has gone through a number of development processes which have been on foot in this area. And Mr Temporary Speaker, I have to say I was frankly shocked by the scale of development that is being proposed in an area which is requiring this kind of work. I also pay tribute to the Honourable Penny Sharp from the other place, who has also put a lot of input into this bill. This government has sat on its hands while the Warragamba Dam has been at or near capacity over the last 7.5 years. In 2015, the State Emergency Services commissioned a report into the importance of finding evacuation routes in the event of a 100-year flooding event, and saying that these needed to be implemented because they were vital in saving lives. This government has ignored many of the recommendations of that report. And, you know, as the town where the SES was born, where it was burst out of the floods in 1955 in my community, I say to the government that you ignore the advice of the SES at your own peril, and that it is risking lives for you to be doing that. My community knows firsthand over many years the risk posed by overdevelopment and a lack of clear evacuation routes on floodplains, and it does not support, nor do other people in this state and those who live in these areas, support the overdevelopment of land by greedy developers at the expense and risk of lives. This is a life and death matter. It's one thing to ask the vast majority of landholders to meet strict guidelines for development applications, especially when it comes to environmental protection. We see that as fair and real, but quite another when this government, the New South Wales Berejiklian government, seeks an exemption from its own rules to allow developers to run riot on a floodplain. 2 other aspects of the potential impacts of this bill disturb me greatly as well. Firstly, that the government would think it is acceptable in 2018 to allow flooding from the dam to impact on Aboriginal cultural heritage contained in the Warragamba Valleys National Park Reserve. As a former tour operator, I am always concerned when I see that we have these many sites that around this state which have a cultural and heritage significance to our community, to our First Nations people, to everyone in our community, and the government is showing scant regard for those people. But also it brings to mind some other the whole attitude of this government to land in our community. In my community, we've seen a lot of Crown land sold off, and it wasn't until the other day when I realised a piece of land they've been trying to get rid of for a while back to Crown land so they can sell off actually went into Aboriginal hands under the Native Title Act, and I realise what this race is all really about for this government. It's sell, privatise and develop, and at all costs take whatever pieces of Crown lands or lands that are sacred to our First Nations people off them, because there might be a buck to be made. And I have to say that is a total disgrace, and it just makes me so angry at this government that even now in 2018 we have this colonialist attitude to land. It's disgusting. The National Parks Association of New South Wales, in its submission to the Leadership Council's Standing Committee on State Development, said that the area proposed to be inundated contains crucial artwork, eucalypt scar trees, creation story, waterholes and other significant cultural sites that are part of the cultural heritage of the First Nations people in that area. And a traditional owner in the area, Taylor Clark, said that a temporary inundation of national park land would significantly impact Aboriginal sites and rock art. And if you have, like me, been to some of the less accessible areas in our nation where rock art is found, you would be ashamed of what the government is trying to do, Mr. Temporary Speaker. That to see something that an artist from thousands and tens of thousands of years has placed there to record some moment for them, and to see this government come in an 8-year term and just decide at the flick of a pen they're going to get rid of it, it's a disgrace. Ms. Taylor Clark has added that it only takes a small amount of moisture to start to dissolve what is holding these really already very fragile artworks on the wall. But, you know, this attitude of the government, they don't care. The inquiry into this amendment held by the other place was also advised that the Gundungurra Aboriginal Heritage Association Incorporated advised that its people have an Indigenous land use agreement over the area proposed to be inundated due to the raising of the Warragamba dam wall, and that the association advised that the bill will go against the intent of the Indigenous land use agreement, given the likely inundation of our country and damage to our cultural heritage if the dam wall is raised. Yet again, complete disregard for the First Nations people here by this government, continuing colonialist practices in 2018. Surely any culturally aware person would hear concerns like this and think to themselves that deliberately allowing floodwater to enter these significant areas is just plain wrong. The second aspect of all of this that disturbs me greatly is that someone would willingly put at risk the environmental attributes of the World Heritage listed Greater Blue Mountains area. And, you know, the government may not care about the critically endangered regent honeyeater, but I have had representations from my community about that particular bird, which is, this area is a known breeding habitat, and it has a population currently listed to be less than 400 of those birds. And that, again, is another, the regent honeyeater. So that's another issue that's been raised by my constituent. I think this government needs to realise that they are just legal custodians of some of this land, and there is actually a broader concern in our state from all people, not just First Nations people, but about retention of those things. And of course, the wider environmental concern is putting at risk the World Heritage listed Greater Blue Mountains area. And again, to return to the inquiry in the other place, I can't believe we have to put this on the record, like that this government can't get it themselves. But Mr. Roger Lambert, who's an ecologist, has said this project would result in inundation within the World Heritage area of temperate eucalypt forest and rainforest, habitat for a range of threatened flora and fauna, including at least 2 eucalypt species and a significant number of cultural heritage sites. The period of inundation would extend for periods of long enough to impact on plant species and other organisms existing within the temporary inundation area. Again, no regard from this vandalising government. This fact wasn't disputed by the government and conceded to the inquiry in the other place saying that based on a preliminary assessment of the Warragamba dam raising proposal, in a 1 in 100 chance per year flood, up to an additional 0.06% or 0.06% of the World Heritage Area would be temporarily inundated above the area that would be flooded now. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a huge difference. The government stated that the increase in the time of inundation over and above what would happen now would be from hours to a number of days up to around 2 weeks. Mr Speaker, I'd ask for a small extension of time, please.
Member for Maitland requests an extension of time. Favour?
Yep.
Well done.
Thank you. The impact on Aboriginal cultural heritage and the possibility of managed inundation of the Greater Blue Mountains World Heritage Area should be reason enough for this government to go back to the drawing board. This issue is not as simple as allowing floodwater from an enlarged Warragamba dam to flow into National Park and the government being freed of its environmental management responsibilities. This is a vastly complex proposition. They have got the order of it wrong. There's no EIS happening yet, and they have to ensure that they are looking after all of these concerns. And I just want to finally remake this point. No matter how long people on that side of the House think that they will be in control of the numbers and will be able to ram through things for their donors, for their developers, for all those other people that they think they owe favours to, the land in this state, in this nation, will remain as something that we all are impacted by, that we all live by, that we all have a very vested interest in. And the short-sightedness of a government that would bring this bill to the table is beyond comprehension from those who are students of history, from those who are students of First Nations and colonialisation, of environment, of any educated or caring sort of view of the world. And they should hang their heads in shame on that side of the House, and I would urge them not to support this bill and to oppose it. Thank you.
Temporary Speaker.
I thank the member for Maitland.